A man named John awakens from 90 days of hibernation in a spaceship, feeling disoriented and nauseous, common side effects of the hibernation drug. The spaceship he is in is called Odyssey 1, which is on a mission to Titan, Saturn's moon. John has been in space for over 9 months, most of it spent in hibernation. The ship's captain, Franks, urges him to get to work after cleaning up. John takes a quick shower and joins Franks and a third crew member named Nash to inspect the ship's system, which is in excellent condition. The ship receives a holiday greeting from the mission director, Sam, from Houston, along with instructions to complete psychological evaluations. Next, John checks his personal inbox and feels disappointed because there are no messages from his girlfriend, Zoe. During his evaluation, he admits he misses fresh air the most. Then Nash tells him to check the radios, but John tells him that he is struggling to remember Zoe's last name. Nash reassures him that confusion is normal after waking up. While doing radio maintenance, John remembers the party where he first met Zoe. Sam had introduced her to him, mentioning that he was one of the candidates for the Titan mission. This memory helps him remember her last name, Morgan. Next, the crew sends a message to Earth confirming the ship's systems are fine and returns to their hibernation pods. As John falls asleep, he recalls a presentation about the Titan mission, which explained how the ship would slingshot around Jupiter to reach Titan and collect resources critical to solving Earth's environmental crisis. That day, Zoe sat next to him immediately after another candidate named Gordon left his seat. After another 90 days, John wakes up and starts his routine. However, he hears Zoe's voice whispering his name. He follows the voice, and suddenly the ship shakes violently, the lights flicker, and the AI issues a warning. Then screws fall from the ceiling, and a loose panel crashes down, striking John and knocking him unconscious. When John wakes up, Franks and Nash are tending to him. They explain they don't know what caused the turbulence, since John was the only one awake during the incident. John then investigates the damage and finds a dent in the hull and damaged wires, but no evidence of impact or error messages from Earth. Despite resetting the ship's systems, everything seems to function normally, except for communications. Next, John records a message for Mission Control detailing the situation. He then remembers the time he met Zoe at a cafe, where she helped him beat a video game level. He told her that he has no family, which made him an ideal candidate for the mission. Next, Franks insists the mission must continue since the ship appears stable and poses no immediate threat. Nash disagrees, warning that the ship might suffer structural stress, risking decompression during the slingshot maneuver. Franks orders the crew to focus on repairs while waiting for further instructions from Earth. Later, John falls asleep on the bridge and dreams about the romantic times he spent with Zoe. However, Nash wakes him up and tells him that continuing the mission is not a good idea, as the ship's system is reading false data about its integrity. Nash warns John to consider aborting the mission, cautioning that they might not even make it to Jupiter at this rate. Suddenly, the ship's lights and screens flicker briefly before stabilizing, but diagnostics show no issues. Next, Frank summons the crew to his office, revealing that he overheard their conversation through the ship's surveillance. He warns them about the severe consequences of abandoning the mission without just cause. He reminds them to work as a team and instructs them to proceed to their next hibernation. As John prepares for hibernation, he remembers Zoe's practical suggestion that they remain friends with benefits, knowing his potential selection for the mission would hurt both their feelings if they got too close. Then Nash approaches John and suggests they adjust their sleep cycles to wake up 12 hours earlier than Frank's. This would give them a chance to reverse the slingshot maneuver and return to Earth. At first, John rejects the idea, calling it mutiny. Nash then shares a story about an Antarctic station commander who refused to evacuate despite imminent danger. Rescuers later found the crew dead, each shot in the head while the commander was missing. After hearing this, John reluctantly agrees to Nash's plan, but insists they must find further evidence of structural damage before acting. John then gives Nash his passcode so he can adjust the sleep duration for him. Next, John enters hibernation and recalls Zoe giving a speech about their mission. She explains that the ship only carries enough fuel for a one-way journey to Titan. After that, the crew must mine Titan's abundant methane resources to fuel their return to Earth. After 89 days and 12 hours, John wakes up and sees Zoe's reflection in his hibernation pad. Then he finds Nash, who has already uploaded the calculations, to use the slingshot mechanism to return to Earth. On the bridge, John and Nash see Jupiter, realizing they will be the first humans to pass it. Next, John tells Nash he won't cooperate anymore because there is no sign of damage on the ship. Nash grows angry and shouts at John, but their argument is interrupted when Franks arrives on the bridge. Franks sends Nash to the ration room and begins preparing with John for the slingshot maneuver. Then Franks advises John to avoid taking sides, warning that a dispute with Nash is inevitable. Later, Nash begs John not to proceed with Franks, but John has already made up his mind and ignores him. As Nash lashes out, Franks tells him he will report him to Houston once they re-establish a connection. Later, John inspects the damaged part of the ship, which suddenly becomes unstable and sends him flying into deep space. Just then, John gathers his thoughts and realizes everything is just in his head. With his mental state very unstable, John remembers a conversation with Zoe where she told him about moths instinctively flying toward the light to escape danger. After some time, Franks and John carefully execute the maneuver, while Nash watches from the sidelines. The ship's thrusters engage, and the AI issues a system overload warning, but Franks insists they continue. Sparks fly from the damaged panel as the ship shakes violently. Despite the chaos, John presses the button just in time, completing the slingshot. Slowly, the ship stabilizes, and the system confirms they are on course for Titan. The crew celebrates their success with a drink, and the tension is relieved for now. After a few days, John is inspecting the radios when he suddenly hears a voice shouting his name. Quickly, he takes the radio to Franks and Nash, who both deny using the comms. With nothing on the radar for 1,000 miles, Nash dismisses it as a hallucination. Franks orders everyone back to hibernation. While hibernating, John dreams of the moment he was selected for the Titan mission. When he told Zoe the news, she said she already knew and didn't want him to go. John felt hurt by her reaction, believing the mission was bigger than both of them. He left her house that day after returning her keys. When John wakes up, he falls to the ground and begins running around the ship to feel better. Instead, he sees Zoe on the ship, and though he knows it's a hallucination, he follows it, repeating to himself that she isn't real. However, Franks intercepts him, revealing that Nash found something in the reactor room and needs his help. Franks then tells him that whatever he thinks he saw, it isn't Zoe, and everything is just in his head. John insists he knows what is real and goes to Nash. Next, Nash notices the reactor's power output rising, which could endanger the ship's engine. Though unsure if it's related to the hull breach, he tells John they should turn back. Nash then admits he isn't feeling well and asks John to double-check his numbers. Seizing the moment, John questions Nash about how Franks knew of his hallucinations. Nash denies telling Franks but soon breaks down, doubting his own memories. He confesses he can't remember his parents' names or faces. John tries to calm him down, but Nash provokes him, saying that Zoe has already forgotten him and moved on. As John grows angry, Nash urges him to return home, but John repeatedly says they are not abandoning the mission. John then tells Nash he is hallucinating, as the reactor screen shows no numbers at all as it is blank. Next, Franks overhears and summons them both to the bridge. He reveals that someone issued a low-level command to manipulate the reactor's power, and the login was made using John's credentials. Franks already knows Nash has John's password and accuses him of sabotaging the mission. Franks then pulls out a gun and orders them back to their hibernation pods until he decides what to do with Nash. He escorts them to their pods, but as John enters his pod, he sees Nash and Franks fighting. Franks strikes Nash with the gun, slamming him against the pod and violently hitting his head. Unable to intervene, John falls asleep due to the heavy hibernation drug. Then John remembers the last time he met Zoe, when she asked him if he loved her. He told her that he felt many things for her, but never said he loved her. Later, John wakes up haunted by the memory of Franks beating Nash. After he showers, he searches for Nash but finds no sign of him. Then he meets Franks, who explains that Nash became too unstable, so he knocked him out and placed him in a pod. Holding a gun, Franks warns John to stay in control. Next, Franks reveals that he has heard the story Nash told him about the Antarctic mission, but he claims it isn't the full story. Franks dismisses Nash's version, saying the commander had urged the crew to evacuate, but their fear kept them aboard. The commander froze to death alone, while the gunshot wounds found on the crew were later revealed to be self-inflicted. Franks orders John to go back to work, determined to complete the mission. While inspecting the systems, John notices dark veins spreading under his skin. His arm mutates grotesquely and bursts with blood, only for him to realize it's another hallucination. He then goes to Franks, but Franks worsens his condition by revealing that John's relationship with Zoe was fabricated. She was sent by the selection committee to monitor his mental health. Franks shares unsettling details about their relationship with disturbing accuracy, about how they met in the seminars and at the cafe, finally revealing that he was part of the selection committee. Next, John storms off, refusing to believe this bitter truth, and heads to radio maintenance to focus his mind on work. While working, he receives a transmission from Houston, but the signal cuts out before he can respond. Frank summons him to the bridge, accusing him of hallucinating the call. Security footage shows John talking to himself. To calm him, Frank shows their deep space location, proving the impossibility of contacting Earth. Franks then tells John it's best for him to hibernate, but John refuses and locks himself in a room, demanding to see Nash. Franks promises to comply, but when John opens the door, Franks pushes him against the wall, threatening to kill him if he doesn't obey. John fights back, disarming Franks. After a brutal struggle, Franks nearly chokes John to death, but John lands a punch, grabs the gun, and demands answers about Nash. Franks only laughs, shouting that John will never find Nash. Lost in fragmented memories and haunted by Frank's words, John walks aimlessly through the ship, questioning what's real. Franks uses his confusion to launch another attack, but John breaks Frank's nose and knocks him out with the gun. On the bridge, John uses the ship's cameras but finds no sign of anyone. Franks reappears, and this time, John knocks him unconscious. This guy never stops coming back. Seriously. Next, John asks the AI about Nash's location. The AI responds that Nash is on the bridge. Confused, John checks the crew manifest and uncovers a shocking truth. He is the only crew member. His full name is John Franks Nash, and the other astronauts were hallucinations caused by prolonged exposure to hibernation drugs. This revelation breaks John, and he considers ending his life, but decides to try the radio one last time. To his shock, Zoe answers. Unsure if she's real, John confesses everything, his hallucinations and deteriorating mental state. Zoe then reveals a hard-to-believe truth about the mission. She explains that John is in a high-tech simulation facility in New Mexico. The ship is a perfect replica, buried 1,000 feet underground, designed to study the psychological effects of isolation and hibernation. Zoe admits she was unaware of the simulation and would have stopped it if she'd known. John recalls the slingshot maneuver in seeing Jupiter, but Zoe clarifies these were all simulated events. She explains that the hull damage and panel incident were caused by an earthquake that also disrupted communications and delayed the warning about his drug overdose. A larger-than-intended dose of hibernation drugs caused his delusions. Zoe tells him they wanted to extract him, but the earthquake caused so much damage that the only way out is for him to walk through the airlock to reach a rescue tunnel. As John prepares to leave, Franks reappears, insisting that Zoe's explanation is the real hallucination. Franks claims John invented the story to make sense of his bizarre reality. Refusing to believe him, John opens the airlock, declaring his desire to go home. As Franks vanishes, John tells Zoe he loves her and steps through the airlock. To his surprise, he enters an underground tunnel and sees the fake ship above him. Suddenly, the ground trembles. Voices promising rescue echo alongside the sound of digging machinery. He follows the flickering light to a ladder and notices a dead moth inside a light. This reveals to him that following the light isn't always the answer. Finally, he comes to a horrifying truth as his body is ejected into deep space and he freezes to death. The end. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.